Thank you for participating in our important event. My name is Salih. I am coming from Pearl Institute, Hong Kong. I am the executive director of that organization. And today, I am very proud of being here. Why? Because in the future, my sons, they will say, at that part of history, my father was at the side of dialogue. Because, you know, some people assume that there will be a clash of civilizations. But we assume that we still have hope for dialogue of civilizations. And that's an important day today for the Buddhist and Islamic dialogue. This is why I am very proud of being here. So I want to introduce you to distinguished guest speakers, then the sultans, where we have a word in Islamic saying that sultans of words. They will speak, then I will leave the place.
I wish we were.
Okay.
Sultan with no power. You don't have to read all that.
Okay. Dr. Imtiaz Yusuf is assistant professor, lecturer and director of the Center for Buddhist Wisdom Understanding in the College of Religious Studies at Mahidol University in Thailand, and senior fellow at the Prince Al Walid bin Talal Center for Muslim Christian Understanding, Georgetown University. And other distinguished speaker is Mr. Raymond Lam, also a senior correspondent and editorial writer at Buddhist Door. He interviews Buddhist teachers and people in academia, culture, and the arts, and covers conferences and events around the world. So, first we begin with Mr. Imtiaz Yusuf.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and sawadee krap, and ni hao, and good afternoon to all of you. First of all, I'd like to thank the Pearl Institute for inviting me to Hong Kong to give this talk on Islam and Buddhism, and also to Buddhist Door for sponsoring and being here to make a comment on my paper. There's a long story I have to go and talk about Islam and Buddhism because it's very much in news today. But before I do that, I need to introduce myself. What introduction he gave me was too short. You'll be able to locate me where I am. I'm also happy to see here my student here, Venerable Tuan from Vietnam. He studied with me Islam at Maha Chulalongkorn University, Buddhist University in Bangkok. I'm also too happy to see here Sophia. She was at the Shenzhen at the Conference on Academy of Social Sciences in China when I went there last year. And my wife is here. She's a Thai. Her name is Jamila. So I recognize some friends here. Okay, let me introduce myself first because I am born in Africa. I'm born in Tanzania. Are you familiar with Tanzania?
Yes.
Tanzania is in East Africa, so I'm not black. That's the first question. So yes, there are people like me there. My grandfather comes from India. I was born in Tanzania. I'm a British citizen. I was educated in Tanzania, in India at the Aligarh Muslim University. Yeah, and I did my PhD at Temple University in Philadelphia with Professor Ismail Al-Faruqi, if you're familiar with the name.
Sayyid was the founder of the institute.
Yes, yeah. And then for last 26 years, I'm living in Thailand. I am at the Mahidol University currently, and we have a center for Buddhist Muslim understanding. Now, it's a Buddhist Muslim understanding, not Muslim understanding. And I am a director of this center. Now, this center was set up just last 3 years ago because of ASEAN community, ASEAN, Southeast Asian group of nations. If you look at Southeast Asia, 40% of Southeast Asia is Muslim and 40% of Southeast Asia is Buddhist. Christians only make up 10% or 12% in Philippines. So Buddhist-Muslim dialogue is very important. And I'll take you through the whole story of what is the history of relations. And I've been working on the topic of Islam and Buddhism for some time. I speak 6 languages. So I speak English, Swahili, Hindi, Urdu, Arabic, Thai. Yeah, I think that's all. So I'm very much confused. And I say I'm globalized before globalization. I'm globalized before globalization. because you can see, right? Maybe you need to put up the light or something. Yeah, yeah. I'm globalized by religions, cultures, and languages. And this is not the Pepsi Cola globalization. Today we have the Pepsi Cola globalization.
The front lights should be turned off so the effect will be better.
Yeah, we don't have to. Okay, so I'm just going to talk about fundamentals of Buddhist-Muslim dialogue and what is the story. Thank you. I begin with a saying of Prophet Muhammad. Some people will have a topic or are not familiar with this, but as a child, thank you. As a child, my mother used to tell me that Prophet Muhammad emphasized on knowledge. And he has a saying, she used to tell me this teaching, that utlubul ilm walau fis sin, in Arabic. Seek knowledge until China. Now what did the Prophet Muhammad mean by seeking knowledge until China? Not to study Islam in China, of course, but to study science, culture, civilization. Because in the 7th century, when Prophet Muhammad was there, China was at the height of its civilization. Everything, most of the things which we use today, came from China. So this is the early view of Islam, of what China is, or what Far East is. Yeah. So I'm a student of history of religion. So my understanding is how Buddhism and Islam shares common religious history. And I'm mostly coming from Wilfred Cantwell Smith's approach of unity among the religions. As human beings, we share a common religious history. From the first human being, it doesn't matter, was created by God, or came out of dependent origination, or evolution, your choice. You know, whichever worldview you want. But in terms of religious history, we share a common religious history. So my study of Buddhism is without imposing Muhammad's finality of prophethood on Buddhists, and not imposing Buddhahood on Muslim. I keep them. I'm a student of religion, phenomenology of religion, and history of religion. So both positions, if you look from the point of view of institutionalized Islam and Buddhism, are unacceptable. But we are in an academic setting, and we are talking about dialogue and understanding. That's why I come from a position saying that we all share a common religious history from the first human being until today, including the Eskimos. We think the Eskimos have no religion. They also have their religion. As human beings, we share a common religion. Another thing about China is this story, follow the white camel. Islam to China, in China until 1800. There's a story of the camel of the Prophet, when Prophet Muhammad went from Mecca to Medina, and people asked Prophet to come and stay at his home. And he said, I will release my camel, and wherever it goes, I will go and stay in that house. So same, people from Central Asia came to China as a land of harmony, as a land of peace, and they settled here. Since early days of the history of Islam, this is too crowded a slide, but there's an article I'm talking about is from an article by Professor Ziv Ben Dorbenek in the Cambridge History of Islam. It just came out recently, and you can have a look at that. Another thing about Islam, especially in relation to Southeast Asia, are the expeditions of Zheng He. We are very familiar with Zheng He. In fact, this history of Islam in Southeast Asia begins from the period of Zheng He. Islam arrives in Indonesia from China first, and then from India. It comes from Arabia very, very late on. So this story is also very important because Zheng He was a Chinese admiral, you know very well, from Yunnan. And he was a Hui Muslim, and he went to many parts of the world. And he was a Muslim. And because China, Fujian, if you see the map, to Indonesia is sea. And that's by the sea route comes to Indonesia. In fact, Aceh and all that part of Java, there's a strong presence of Islam there. This is the mosque of Zheng He in Surabaya. This is a mosque. It looks like a Chinese temple. a long history of relationship I'm talking about. Today we only know about Muslims and Buddhist conflicts in southern Thailand, in Myanmar, and Sri Lanka. It's a very poor story. We have a long cultural history. And unfortunately, many of us don't know about this long cultural history of interaction and interrelation. We just know what is going on, and I'll come to that later on. So this mosque is still there. You can see from it is being practiced. This is a Friday prayer. It looks like a temple, but it is a mosque, a working mosque, a living mosque. This is in Aceh, in northern Sumatra. This is an important city of Aceh where Chinese traders, Indian traders, Arab traders came. And this is the other meeting of Islam and Buddhism and Asian religions. This one. This is a 400-year-old mosque in southern Thailand. Many people do not know about it. It has three elements here. You have a Thai roof. This is the roof of a Thai temple. You have a Chinese balcony here. And you have the Malay house at the bottom. A synchrony, a syncretism. Unfortunately, our people don't know about this history. This itself, this symmetry tells you that there is a coexistence, there is harmony. You know, we talk about dialogue, but I think dialogue can't happen unless there is an understanding. So there are, and this is again a link. This mosque is present and people are using it until today. I've been to that mosque. And very interestingly, the bottom part has no nail. It's all made of wooden pegs. So this is how you can see even in architecture there is a coexistence. But on the ground, we don't have that. This is another mosque. This is in Chiang Mai. Sophia was there, I think, and she would have seen that. This is a mosque, a Chinese mosque in Chiang Mai. In Chiang Mai, we have Muslims from Yunnan who had migrated from Yunnan into Myanmar, into Chiang Mai, into Mae Sai, and you can read that very well. There's a Thai flag, but also this is a Chinese mosque in Thailand. It is existing until today. There are books about Islam and Taoism and Confucianism. Professor Sachiko Murata has done a lot of work on how Chinese Muslims like Wang, Tai, Yu, and Liu Ji understand Islam and Confucianism. The book Tao of Islam, this is another book. There are books on Islam, Taoism and Confucianism, again, by Professor Izutsu, Sufism and Taoism. All this literature is there, but unfortunately, we do not know much about it. This is the latest. This book just came out 2 years ago. It's Common Ground Between Islam and Buddhism, by Professor Reza Qasmi at the Ismaili Institute in London, and Buddhism and Islam on the Silk Road. Very, very nice, by Professor Johan Everskov. I invited him recently at my university. This came out about 2 years ago. So yes, there's much going on. But before we talk about go to the main topic of my presentation, I need to talk about what is interreligious dialogue. I'm a student of Professor Leonard Swidler, and he put this 10 commandments or 10 principles of interreligious dialogue. He says, enter into dialogue so that you can learn and grow, not to change the other. Dialogue, today most people use the word dialogue to convert the other. Dialogue is a dialogical process where we change and grow together. And change and growth is very challenging. So people use dialogue but don't understand what dialogue is all about. But before we do dialogue, we need to understand each other. So dialogue is about change and growth. Second is allow the people the space to enter discussion. Everyone is not able. Some people keep quiet in dialogue. Number 3, everyone must be honest and sincere in dialogue. Very important. We shouldn't have any hidden agenda in dialogue. And everyone must assume that everyone else is equally honest and sincere. Sincerity and honesty is very important in dialogue. Principle number 5, no conversion principle. You're not going to convert anybody. Rather, you get to be converted. In dialogue, when we study other religion, we convert ourselves to understand our own religion better. Number 6, don't feel that you are the spokesman of your faith tradition. This is our problem. Everyone says, I have the right understanding of my religion. We have many prophets these days, after the prophet, and after the wise man and wise teachers. So no one has what do you call it, the colonial power on the faith tradition. Do not assume in advance where there will be agreement. Maybe there will be disagreement. And everyone should be willing to be self-critical. And all should strive to experience others' faith. And number 10, very important, trust is must in dialogue. That dialogue cannot take place. Otherwise, you're talking politics. You're talking in gossips. You're just gossiping and you're calling it dialogue. So these are the principles of dialogue. And I very much follow this kind of, try to follow as much as I can, these 10 principles. So when did history of Islam and Buddhism begin? It is as old as Islam. It takes place in the middle of the 7th century. It's very interesting that when we read the first meeting between Islam and Buddhism in Sindh, what is called Pakistan today, you have reports, and it's still all recorded. When they came to Sindh, they saw the Buddhist temples, they met the Hindus, and they asked the Sultan in Baghdad, how do we treat these people? How do we look at them? And the direction comes saying, treat them as people of the book, Ahl al-Kitab.
Ahl Zimma.
Yeah, Ahl al-Kitab. The text says Ahl al-Kitab. Yeah, Zimma is there, but before that, Ahl al-Kitab pays Zimma, okay? Yeah. So, treat them as Islam looks as Jews and Christians, but Zimma is there. So, it was an attitude of positive attitude towards other religion. And don't destroy their temples. Don't disturb their monks, which is more important than Zimma. Attitude, positive attitude towards other religions. Respect them as they are. So this is our first reference. Second comes from the 8th century in Central Asia, when many Buddhist works were translated into Arabic. Then we come to Al-Fahis of Ibn al-Nadim, and also the role of the Barmak family, very important during the Abbasid period. So there is an interaction, there's an interrelation if you go back historically speaking. We find it also in many historical works. I'm not going to go very detailed in this. The works of Tabari, Asharistani, and Asharistani even goes for, Asharistani is the first comparativist of religion, even Western scholars accept it. And he sees the Buddha as al-Khidr, a seeker of enlightenment. Rashid ad-Din, again, talks about, he introduces Buddhism to Islam. And then we come to the 12th and 15th century when Islam and Buddhism meet in Southeast Asia. We know only up now what is happening now, from 12th to the 15th century. I'm taking you much earlier than that. And unfortunately, many Muslim scholars don't write about it. Many Buddhist scholars don't write about it. It's very interesting that even in Thailand, we have what is called as the madrasa, we call them pondoks or pesantren. And if you go to a pondok or a pesantren in southern Thailand, you will find many kuti. Kuti are the huts in which the monks live in a temple. The madrasa or pondok or pesantren in Indonesia, in Malaysia are same pattern. You have the mosque, you have the house of the imam, and you have the kutis, huts in which the monks, in which the students who are studying religious studies are staying there. So again, there's an influence on the schools. On the other hand, of contemporary scholars, Chandra Muzaffar from Malaysia and Sulak Sivara, they're both Muslim and Buddhist activists, and they are also engaging in this activity. And some other activities have been taking place of this. So I've been trying to say is that there is a long history of our interaction. And after 9/11 in Taiwan, Dharma Master Sin Tao, I don't know if you're familiar with him, he is the founder of the Museum of World Religions in Taipei. He has held several Muslim Buddhist dialogue sessions. I've attended them in New York, in Thailand, and everywhere else. And my center organized the conference on compassion, the bridge between Islam and Buddhism in 2013. So all these activities are going on, just to set up the background. Okay. Yes, Islam and Buddhism are two unrelated cosmological worldviews, but they're met along the Silk Road. I'm just coming from Kunming. in Kunming is Yunnan, you know. They're asking me that we are building a silk road, one belt, one road, one belt. It passes through 7 Muslim countries. We know business, we know economy, but we don't know socio-cultural dimension of relation between China and the rest of Asia. It's very interesting. If China wants to lead the world, I told them you have to do it differently. And that's a challenge for them. They said, we don't know nothing about it, because it is of its political history. So the main difference between Islam and Buddhism lies in their theistic and non-theistic. For Muslims, it's very difficult to conceptualize a religion in which God is not the central part of the thing. I gave this lecture in Aligarh 10 years ago. I said, how can there be a religion where God is not important? I said, think out of your box. I told the Muslims, think out of your box. Why should God be central to every religion? Every religion emerges in different environment, in different contexts. In Buddhism, there is great importance given to ultimate reality, but it is not called God, as we would like them to look for God. Okay? I remember I studied Buddhism with Professor Charles Fu from Taiwan, and the first class I studied with him, he said, don't look for God, don't look for Quran, don't look for Bible, don't look for Torah in Buddhism. That was the beginning of my journey. So, yes, Buddhism is non-theistic, where God is, the question about God is not important. Buddha didn't say that, he said, and you know the famous story of the Buddha, he says, if somebody shoots an arrow to him, you'll not ask the question, who shot the arrow, where the arrow came from, what is the kind of the arrow, how strong it is, how light it is. What will you do? Take him to the hospital first. That was the environment in which the Buddha is functioning in India. There's oppression, there's exploitation, there's a caste system, and he wants to relieve human suffering. So Muslims should not seek the presence of Creator God in Buddhism. There is Udayana Sutta, where the Buddha talks about the unborn, but that's another story as a whole. So Islam and Buddhism, as I say, need to be understood on their own terms. I know you can see here, without Islamizing Buddhism or Buddhizing Islam, it's very difficult. I have to let Buddhism be on its own. And and Islam should be on its own status without converting one into the other. Okay, so since there are no prophets in Asian religions and no Buddhas in Islam, can the Buddha be considered as a prophet and Muhammad as an enlightened founder of a religion for the purpose of building dialogue? I'm asking you to think the unthinkable. I'm asking you to think the unthinkable. There are no Buddhas in Islam, and there are no prophets in Buddhism or Asian religions. So how to do? Answer is yes and no. For the Buddhist, the Buddha is more than a prophet. And for Muhammad, for Muslims, Muhammad is the last prophet. Since both of them are present, are part of human history, it is possible to proceed on Muslim-Buddhist dialogue by viewing them as founders of religion, but with a caution, not to include one into the other or vice versa. Otherwise, we will eclipse their positions, their original positions. So yes, they have different teachings, but the teachings are about humanity, about suffering, about why are we here. So these rules are very important in Islam and Buddhism. Now, there are some scholars, and I think many of you Muslims will agree with me, that the Quran mentions that there are prophets who are not named. Now, whereas a Muslim, I would say the Buddha is a prophet, because the Quran itself says that there are some prophets who are mentioned and some are not mentioned. Quran chapter 4:78. وَلَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا رِسَالًا مِنْ قَبْلِكَ. And it goes on. He says, and indeed we have sent forth apostles before your time, to Muhammad. Some of them we have mentioned to you, and some of them we have not mentioned to you. So in this light, as a Muslim, I can say the Buddha is a prophet. But again, that's problematic. Many Muslims say, how you say that? But that's a theological question. I'm mostly looking as a student of religion. Again, chapter 14. And never have we sent forth any apostle otherwise Then in people's language, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ مِنْ رَسُولٍ إِلَّا بِلِسَانِ قَوْمٍ, who speaks in their own language. So the Quranic concept of prophethood offers an analog with Buddhist concept of the Buddha in certain ways. Buddhas appear in different epochs. And we know only the Siddhartha Buddha, the historical Buddha. But there have been many, many, many Buddhas. And what do? They teach the path to Nirvana. So, let me go to the next one. I'm going to quickly over here. So both for me, Buddha and Prophet Muhammad and the Buddha are liberators of humanity. They're seeing their community, they come into the world where there's suppression, there's exploitation, there is so many problems and suffering, and they are offering the pathway out. So what do they share? What do the Islam, Buddhism, and Taoism and Confucian share together? Morality and ethics, liberation from oppression and exploitation, equality, justice, freedom, fraternity. And very interesting, I have a paper on this one. The Quran, as per the Quran, the Muslims are to be the middle people, the middle nation, ummatan wasatan. No extremism in Islam. This is similar to yin yang in Buddhism, in Taoism, Confucianism, and the middle, Majjhima Patipada of the Buddha, the middle way. Now, I have a paper on this published, it's available on the internet, of how these two concepts, Ummatan Wasatan, Muslims as the middle people, and the middle part of the Buddha can lead to dialogue and social engagement between Islam and Buddhism. Any questions here? I'm going to give a break here. Any questions here? Any? Yeah. No.
I think thank you for your inputs on this topic, but you say about the religion, as we know that the monotheist religion, there must be the presence of, in monotheistic religions, the presence of God must be there.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think that put aside the finality of the Prophet Muhammad, then according to the view of the scholars, and I myself think, but as a student of Islam I learned, if you put aside the finality of the Prophet Muhammad in our religion, Deen, that is Deen Islam, then the whole religion collapses. How can you, this basic point we ignore, that the finality of the Prophet Muhammad put aside and then we talk. The rest of the things, in my point of view, in the rest of the other research scholars of Islam and the Muhaqqiqeen and the Mujtahideen of Islam, cannot be acceptable, because this is the core issue. If we compromise on the core issue, the rest of the talk and the dialogues become something very hard to digest.
I said I'm doing dialogue, I'm not doing conversion. I'm a Muslim, I believe Muhammad is final prophet, but I'm doing dialogue, I'm trying to understand other religions on their terms and let them understand my religion on my terms. It's not a conversion engagement here. Yes, for me, Prophet Muhammad is the final prophet, but it's not for them. Why should I impose that position on them? If I impose that position on the Buddhists, I'm asking them to become Muslims. That's not my job. I'm doing dialogue. I'm not doing mission. Mission and dialogue are two different things. Let us be clear on this one. Mission and dialogue are two different things. In dialogue, we learn the other, and we learn the other to understand ourselves. And I'm not doing that. I'm doing dialogue, I'm not doing mission.
No, I do understand the dialogue, but being when you are, from the Islamic perspective side, we of course can find some, these areas, I think not in all the monotheistic religion, but all school of thoughts or other, the non-revealed non-religions, these things are common.
Yeah.
These have no problem.
Yeah.
These are the moral values you can find in every, religion, and even in the common human beings. Nobody will deny these, the moral values.
Yeah.
But when you talk about the beliefs, there is something very important that we cannot ignore, but these things are common everywhere. These I have no problem.
But I'm not making a confessional speech here.
Okay.
I'm not confessing my faith here, now that I'm asking them a confession here. I'm doing an academic activity. I'm doing a dialogue, to understand them. And I'm not the first Muslim to do that. Al-Biruni has done, Al-Shahrastani has done, Rashid al-Din has done, Al-Tabari has done, and I'm not on empty grounds here. I need to proceed. Okay?
Please.
Yeah. Please don't look at my speech from a confessional point of view. I'm a Muslim. Look at it as an engagement in dialogue. Okay? I'm not making my Muslim position. I'm not making a confession of I'm not a Muslim or I'm a Muslim. That's not my position, my job here. Okay? Then I would do that in the mosque.
Okay, please.
Okay? I would do that in a mosque or in a church if I was a Christian. Okay? All right. This is all about methodology here we are talking about. Okay. All right. So now this one will be more problematic for you if you are coming from that point of view. This one will be even more problematic for you, what I'm going to say now, next. History of Islam, I told you, it begins very early, so they call them as Ahl al-Kitab, people of the book. Professor Muhammad Hamidullah. Are you familiar with Professor Muhammad Hamidullah? Professor Muhammad Hamidullah was from Hyderabad, one of the great...
Dr. Hamidullah.
Yeah, one of the great scholars of Islamic studies.
He came to Pakistan.
Yeah, I don't want to hear that. Okay, can I?
Yeah.
Okay, please. I want to make a presentation here, okay? He may have come to Pakistan, he's come to many places. In his view, the Buddha is mentioned symbolically in one of the chapters of the Quran. What is that? There's a chapter in the Quran, which according to Muhammad Abdullah, not me, okay? There's a chapter in the Quran, it's called At-Tin, Surah At-Tin. At-Tin wa Zaytuni wa Turi Sinin wa Azal Baladil Amin. This chapter in the Quran mentions about the fig and the olive, Mount Sinai, and this land made safe. According to Professor Hamidullah, he is a commentator on the Quran. He's translated the Quran into French, and one of the respected scholars of Islam, in a way. He says, olive refers to Jesus. Mount Sinai refers to Moses. And the city, land made safe, refers to Muhammad, symbolic references. So what about the fig? The fig doesn't appear in any of the 23 prophets mentioned in the Quran. Professor Hamidullah says, the Buddha attained nirvana under a wild fig tree. If you go and check the name of the Bodhi tree, the botanical name is Ficus religiosa. And Professor Muhammad Hamidullah comes to a conclusion that since this tree does not figure in the life of any of the Quranic prophets, the mention of the fig in the Quran is a symbolic reference to the Buddha. Now this is a Muslim view, okay? Not a Buddhist view. This is a Muslim view of respecting the Buddha as a prophet. Now, this is great for building bridges and dialogue what we are talking about. Otherwise you are fighting out of ignorance. So his position is great. And Professor Hamidullah, I don't think anyone would like to contest him on that one. He also mentioned, Professor Hamidullah, again in his book, I have the reference there, says Zulkifl in the Quran refers to Buddha's place of residence, Kapilavastu, mentioned in the chapter 2185. Well, many people did not accept it. And this is not acceptable to Buddhists, because Buddhists will say, no, how can the Buddha is mentioned in the Quran? Okay? Buddha was before Muhammad. That's a Buddhist position. Just as you are contesting that finality of the Prophet is final, the Buddhists, and I engage with them all the time, I have 2 students here with me, okay? They'll say, why Buddha, why Muhammad, why Buddha in the Quran? Buddha is special for them, just as Muhammad is special for us. But in spite of these problems, we have to live together in this world. Otherwise you just end up where you are doing today in modern world. Violence, bombs, attacks, everything. So we have to live together. I'm just reporting that, yes, for Muslim, Muhammad is final. For the Buddha, for the Buddhist, Buddha is very important. But what is their message? What are they all about? They are all about how to live humanly, how to help those who are suffering, how to liberate all those who are under oppression. If we just sit and talk and contest is right or I am wrong, we don't help to elevate the problems of humanity. And you can see the world today, what it is. I'm reading a book, very interesting book by Christian postmodern theologian called the truth. He says we're living robotic life today. You can just, ourselves. We're all living by technology. Everybody is doing this. Everybody's with the machine. A girl got killed in Bangkok because she was near a railway line, Muslim girl, with a hijab and earphone. She couldn't hear the train coming. And she was doing this. Now, this is where our humanity comes in. And it doesn't matter what religion you are, and that's what is much needed. So, for me, the message of the Buddha and Muhammad are the messages of liberation through different approaches to the truth. Liberation through, yes, for Muslims, the Tawheed. Liberation through Tawheed, moralistic monotheism. And for the Buddhists, emptiness, sunyata, nirvana. As ways to end exploitation of human being by human being as a cause behind injustice, inequality, and suffering. And that is what is needed today, in our world today. I'm not going to go much into this. So, I'm going to now go into the contemporary situation. The Muslim world is divided into different cultural, linguistic zones. The Arab Middle East, everybody thinks all Muslims are same. The Arab Middle East is made up of Arab Middle East, and the non-Arab regions of Iran, Turkey, Kurdistan, and Afghanistan. They are not Arabs. Africa is made of North Africa, West Africa, and East Africa. I come from East Africa. Central Asia, you are familiar with it. The Turk people, this is the Turkic world. China, made of Hui and Uyghur, big issues. Okay. Hui and Uyghur Muslims. There are two different communities in China. The Hui Chinese are Muslim. Everything they do is Chinese. Their food is Chinese, their culture is Chinese, their language is Chinese. Everything is Chinese except their religion is their Muslim. And Uyghur are Turkic. So there's a lot of difference between them. South Asia, Pakistan, Bangladesh, India, Sri Lanka, Southeast Asia. The whole Indo-Play, the maritime Southeast Asia is all Muslim. Indonesia, Malaysia, Brunei, and the mainland is all Buddhist. So two main parts, Islam and Buddhism coexist today largely in Southeast Asia. Because Thailand is the largest Buddhist country in the world. And Indonesia is the largest Muslim country in the world. Sorry, not Pakistan.
I know.
Yes. So in Southeast Asia, we are living in direct contact, Islam and Buddhism. And to tell you frankly, Islam and Buddhism have coexisted in Southeast Asia for 900 years. 900 years. And there is no one Muslim scholar of Buddhism in Southeast Asia. No one Muslim. And no one Buddhist scholar of Islam in Southeast Asia. No one Buddhist scholar of Islam in Southeast Asia. What have they been doing? It's interesting. I'm living in Southeast Thailand for 26 years. When I came to Thailand first time, I sat in a taxi and the driver asked me, what is your religion? I said, I'm a Muslim. You don't eat pork? And you have 4 wives. This is it. This is Islam, my friend.
Simple.
I said, okay, let me turn around the question. Let me turn around the question and ask the Muslims, who is a Buddhist? What is a Buddhist? Buddhist is one who eats pork and has many mistresses. So what's the difference? What's the difference between 4 wives and mistresses? Maybe one is legal, one is not. But it's same. Nothing. These are not religions. And I ask my students, and I ask all of you, suppose right now, the Buddha, Prophet Muhammad, and Prophet Jesus came into this room. What would they talk about?
Peace.
How to relieve human suffering.
Yes. They won't talk about pigs and women. This is not important. This is our existence. And this is what is missing in dialogue, my friend. They will talk about suffering. Most important, the ecological destruction. Yeah, we're sitting in a cool room here, having a nice talk on dialogue. I'm sorry. Once we go out, after we know this all out, that so hot. Who has done that? who has done all this ecological destruction. We, the human beings, of nature. Buddhism is the most important about ecology, of all ecology. But every time I go in Thailand, I don't want a plastic bag. I just don't want the plastic bag. It won't make a big difference, but ecological destruction is all by us. And all religions are talking about how to live in ecology. Why? Because we are people of the modern age. And modern age is age of violence. It has advanced so much today that if you are dying, they put all these tubes and machines on you not to let you die in the hospitals. And the bill keeps on going up, 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 up. Right? When you get in the hospital, they put all these things on you. Why? Because it is survival of the fittest. It is social Darwinism. The doctors, medical technology is to keep you alive even you are to die. It is epistemology, it is ontology of violence. And it is violence everywhere. We're talking about peace, we're not talking about harmony. Asian value of religious living together before the colonial period was harmony, yin yang, middle way, ummat and wasatan. That's what I'm trying to say. Can't be one, but we have to remind ourselves, repeat ourselves what is needed today. Okay, so I said to you about this common view about Muslims are poor, not poor eaters. Okay, so Muslim view is that Buddhists, now come to this. Today a common Buddhist view of Islam is that it is a violent religion. Islam caused the end of Buddhism in India. This is a common Buddhist view. The Turks have to know about this. There's a University of Nalanda in India, which was attacked by a Turkish warrior, Bakhtiyar Khilji. I have a paper on that one. And that ended Buddhism in India. So this is a colonial construction. That Buddhism ended in India because the University of Nalanda was destroyed. I mentioned to you the book by Johann Elvershoff and Romila Thapar. They say this is not true. Because Hinduism revived itself back as bhakti devotion. But normal view in Thailand and everywhere that the Turks are responsible for the end of Buddhism. Muslims are responsible for the end of Buddhism in India. But Bakhtiyar Khilji, if you read the historical records, he didn't come as a Muslim, he came as a raider. Common Muslim view is that Buddhists are kafir. Very interesting. They are unbelievers. They are polytheists. They eat pork. This is the common view of Muslims about Buddhists. I told you 900 years of coexistence, but these are the views of each other today. So I was in a conference in Indonesia, and a Buddhist young man comes to me, who knows Islam very well, and asks me, "Sir, am I a kafir?" Kafir means unbeliever. Silananda, venerable. You know what I mean, okay? Am I a kafir? I said, "Are you Pharaoh? Are you Pharaoh? Do you deny the ultimate reality?" He said, "No." So I said, "You're not kafir." But Muslims have the habit of calling everyone kafir. I said, moratorium, don't call others kafir. It's an insult. It's an abuse of the others. And what is the Buddhist view? Buddhist view of Muslims are violent. Muslims are dirty, Muslims are uneducated. All this is the garbage we have, baggage we have, in which we are living together today. But we don't know each other. So there's a need to abandon our biased views about each other. And even the use of non-theism, atheism, creates problems of understanding and lose of meaning in this translation. There is a need for employment of empathy. Now, empathy is important. It does not mean conversion when it comes to interfaith and intercultural dialogue. Empathy means I need to understand you as you are, and you understand me as I am. That will be the icebreaker. With all this violence going on, I teach Buddhist monk students in Chulalongkorn University. And now there's so much violence going on in the Middle East. It's not going on because of Islam, because of the problems over there. So my Buddhist students, Buddhist monk students, they have good intention for me. What they tell me, "Sir, why are you still a Muslim?" Why? Because violence. whole destruction going on. I say I'm a Muslim because I believe in God. They have good intention for me. So this is what the view is of Islam today. And all this got to do with the politics of the Middle East. I'm going to show you some pictures. The tensions are a lot in Southeast Asia. So some pictures are very graphic, okay? So I warned you before, okay? Shall I proceed?
Yes.
Okay, be ready for those pictures, okay? To show to you that today we have conflict in Southeast Asia. Islam and Buddhism are in war. And it will become more and more because of in my view, because of ignorance on both the parts of the both communities not knowing each other. There's a conflict going on in southern Thailand, which is basically a nationalist conflict of Patani, which is the Malay kingdom. I used to teach in southern Thailand, Patani, in the southern Thailand, for 5 years. Your name? What is your name?
Dr. Haq.
Kazi, Dr. Kazi. And one day after Friday prayer, my colleague, I was teaching at the College of Islamic Studies in Patani. After Friday prayer, one colleague of mine comes to me and says, Achan Yusuf, Sir Yusuf, you are Muslim, it's good, but you are Malay, I love you more. If I was a Malay, I would love me more. So where is Muslim Brotherhood? No, I have to be Malay because I am not part of their Patani struggle. There's a conflict going on in Sri Lanka. Anybody from Sri Lanka? Yes, not from Sri Lanka, yeah. Okay, there's a conflict going in Bangladesh, just last week, a month ago. Rohingya conflict going on in India. Is a Buddhist conflict? No, it's a Bengali conflict. Bangladesh overflow population into India, into Bangladesh, into Myanmar. I'll come to that in a minute. And Myanmar and India is a geographical border where people like you and me, South Asian Aryans, our race ends and the Mongoloid race begins. Nobody looks at this geography of violence between Myanmar, of Rohingya, and population explosion. It's not Hindu and Muslim, it's racism on all the sides. Buddhist racism, Muslim racism, but it's all done in the name of Islam. In Sri Lanka you have a problem. In Thailand we'll have a problem soon. And none of us are prepared because we have not studied each other's religions in a positive way. Okay, I said this to you. So there are ethno-religious conflicts going on in Southeast Asia. It's about majority-minority. Who invented majority and minority? The British invented the majority-minority division. It's outdated, in my view. We need multicultural citizenship. Okay, as I said, there's all this conflicts. Now, this is what happens in Thailand, in Patani. When the army attacked some young separatist in a mosque, it's like Kashmir issue. In the same year, there's another attack in Takpan. This is how children go to school today. Would you like your children to go to school like this? It's worse. It's like Palestine. Army protecting the children. Imagine the psychology of these young children. Wearing hijab is okay, but something more is happening in the background. How will they grow up? What will be their psychological state of mind? This is how children go to school. I don't want my children to go to that. And this is, even the monks have to be guarded by the army to go and collect arms. Some pictures are graphic, okay? This is a monk attacked by separatists, Muslim separatists. You know this very well. I don't need to say anything. No Rohingya. Anyone from Burma? No? Where are you from? Venerable from?
From Bangladesh.
Bangladesh, okay. Yeah, I mentioned Bangladesh. Another problem, big problem going on in Bangladesh. You're familiar with this. It's a militant Buddhist monk from Sri Lanka and the Rohingya. It's again racism. Bengali and Myanmar and all that. So what needs to be done? I appreciate the work of Hizmet movement here very much. Only two people here, but I know that for some time. I respect the work of Fethullah Gulen. I'm not propagating on your behalf, okay? And I said this before, even before coming to Hong Kong. Fethullah Gulen is the only person in the Muslim world who has dared to speak about dialogue. Among all the ulama and alim, as far as I know, who's talking about need for dialogue and civic engagement. I'm not interested in Dutch politics, but I see the value of his teaching, which has to be rooted in spiritual and humanistic tradition of Islam. Hizmet movement, or in the Gulen movement, represent Islam as a religion of tolerance, respect, interfaith dialogue, and the need to create bridges between Muslims and the rest of the world. And Mr. Gulen insists on the necessity of creating scientific, technological education. It is an educational movement. Teach reform through education, which is very important. And education is the problem. Because when we say we are teaching education, well, the question is, what are you teaching in education? What is your curriculum? Are you producing more biases and prejudices towards the other, or are you helping to build human beings? Mr. Gulen, in his book, very interesting, takes the example of Prophet Muhammad as a pure water in the heart of a desert, a source of light in all enveloping darkness. And he reminds us, the Muslims, of what Prophet did when he was attacked, when he was wounded severely in one of the battles. Prophet said, "Oh God, forgive my people, for they do not know." So, Islam has been misunderstood religion, as he says, and a timely effort is in an appropriate venue can help to greatly reduce this misunderstanding. To this end, our joint efforts directed towards interreligious dialogue to improve understanding and tolerance can go a long way. Recently, very interesting, after the Paris bombing, Paris attacks recently, after Paris attack, one of my Buddhist students came to me in the class and says to me, "Sir, what about the Paris bombing?" I said, "This is not the last." "Huh, sir?" "Yeah, this is not the last. More coming." I dare say more coming. I know they're coming. Why? Because the root causes of these violent effects are not addressed. The children who are becoming terrorists and attracted by ISIS are the children of discrimination in Europe. They are the children of the ghettos of Europe. They're drug dealers. They're all not good Muslims. They're attracted to it because Islam is seen as a vehicle for expressing their protest. Tell me if Prophet Muhammad has beheaded anybody, one person in his life. No. Tell me if Prophet Muhammad has attacked anybody violently. No. So where does this beheading come? How can you go to heaven by beheading somebody? And everybody says, killing one, killing humanity. Right? This is the state of affairs of Middle Eastern politics. People are migrating to Europe in large numbers. You think Europe is welcoming them? It loves them. Because there's no land, no place to stay in the countries. There's no hope in Syria. There's no hope in Iraq. There's no hope anywhere. We want children. All want development. All want to live comfortably. But no, that's not available. So that's why there's all this conflict. So my presentation I'm going to conclude here is about monotheistic and non-theistic religion, need for moderation. The essential message of Islam and Buddhism is to humanity to avoid extremism in all kinds of order. And the history of religion shows that religious extremism has emerged in all religions. There's a need for building interreligious relations, and we need multicultural citizenship. Globalization has brought us the challenge of accepting diversity, and we don't accept diversity. I'm going to show, this is saying from Rumi, very interesting. The wars of men are like the quarrels of children. Both are meaningless and stupid. Just look at our leaders, what are they doing? I'm going to show you some pictures of what I do. I did a compassion conference in 2013 on compassion as a bridge between Buddhism and Islam. Very rare picture to see a Buddhist monk sitting with a Muslim. This is my friend from Buddhist monk from Indonesia. Some of you may have seen him. This is the Thai Buddhist monk at the same conference. This is what I want. Where the Imam and the monks understand each other, work for peace in our area. This person in the center is an important Imam in the mosque in Bangkok, and the monk on my left, my left, your right, is assistant deputy director of a Buddhist university. I'm very familiar with him. He was my student. Now he has a PhD. This is my class on Islam. I have a bhikkhuni from China, and all of the monks from Myanmar, from Cambodia, from Vietnam. Maybe some of your friends are there. Okay. Yeah, this is your class. I have two students over here. This is our last class. We have two bhikkhunis and other students of mine. Tuan is also there. Venerable Tuan, you can see him. Silananda, are you there? Okay. This is what I did recently. I took my Buddhist monk students to a mosque in Bangkok. I told them, I teach a course to Buddhist monks. I said, we are going to the mosque. They said, sir, no, we are not going. I said, why? I said, why? They said, there are guns in the mosque. There are bombs in the mosque. I said, I'm going with you. And me and my wife, we were a little late to arrive. They arrived before us. The people inside the mosque were ready to receive them. My students didn't get out of the bus until I came. And they walked in with me. See, this is the fear of Islam today. And this is, yes, this is what we need. These are my new students, this year's students. And this is the mosque. They chanted before they eat the meal. Because just right where you do the dua, they also, and after the meal too, in the mosque. It takes time, it takes effort. It's not easy to tell me. To tell you it's not easy, it's very hard to convince both the sides. And this is, these are the Thai people. And this is inside the mosque. After the prayer, they all enter the mosque. And this is the final picture. Thank you very much. Sophia, can you put on the light?
Hey, thank you very much for your great and touching speech. We are grateful to you because there's a Chinese saying that 有朋自远方来，不亦乐乎. And it says that if you have a friend that comes a long way, comes from a far place, won't you be happy? So we are very happy to see you today. And we are also grateful to Mr. Raymond Lam. Why? Because he also came from abroad. He was very tired, but he gave us this opportunity for the dialogue of Buddhist and Islam. So thank you very much for today's event and arranging for this place. And it's yours now.
Yeah. Before I begin, excuse me for looking like I've just survived the Black Death or something. I've just returned from overseas and the busyness and the stress must be getting to me. But anyway, so it's a really big privilege and treat to be sitting alongside you. I'm really not sure what I can add to your brilliant speech, nor am I really sure what I can add to his chapter on Islam and Buddhism, which I have with you right here. You can access it on the Pearl Institute website. So if you haven't had a chance to read it or download it, please do so. It's a really good chapter. Provides a brilliant historical overview and sketch of the history of Islam and Buddhism, and also the current problems and dilemmas and tensions at hand. So I'm not by no means capable of any response that can match your speech, but perhaps I can, from the Buddhist side, offer some thoughts as to what a genuine and authentic Buddhist dialogue with Islam what the 21st century would look like. So I think that Buddhist-Islamic dialogue is critical on quite a few different levels, including the moral and spiritual planes. I would see it, I mean, speaking as a Buddhist myself, I would see it as a moral duty to engage with Islam. I don't see any other, I don't really see how you can make a moral case for not engaging with Islam or any other religion. But even if you're not interested in the moral or spiritual dimensions, at least you can look to the practical, possibly political reasons. What do I mean? Well, Islam is the second largest religion in the world. It has left a deep-rooted impact on world civilization in almost every way possible: economic, technological, intellectual, philosophical. Islam transformed what we know today as the Middle East and influenced Europe profoundly through its absorption of Greek works, classical Greek works, and the development of Islamic philosophy, which in turn spurred the Renaissance and all that. It's entwined with modern geopolitics, and as the professor has talked about, ISIS, terrorism, all those things. It's entwined with these social issues and political issues in ways that we are only beginning to comprehend. And even when we do comprehend them, they're often tinged with bias and prejudice, depending on the media that you consume. Okay, well, what about Buddhism? Well, Buddhism is part and parcel of the cultures of some of the most important countries in the world today. Buddhism has shared the Silk Road with Islam ever since Islam's origins. So ever since Islam's beginnings on the Arabian Peninsula during the Prophet's life. And in some way, in the same way that Islam challenges Buddhism, Buddhism also challenges Islam in a quite unique way. It challenges it in a way that its Abrahamic sisters, Judaism and Christianity, can't. Right? Because how can, for me, as a Buddhist, the way I would see the Muslim perspective is, how can Muslims relate to a non-theistic, trans-historical religion that does not believe in a permanent self or soul, yet is punching far above its weight in shaping civilizations across Eurasia, from China to Indonesia to India, everywhere. So those are the ontological, philosophical, epistemological problems that Buddhism faces with Islam and Islam faces with Buddhism that I think is quite worth discussing over. But as we said, we need to set a few rules for dialogue before we can discuss these things in a more adventurous way. Because if you dive right in before setting initial rules for goodwill, basic trust, a commitment to conversation rather than conversion, and all the rules that you've listed in Leonard Swidler's paper. Without those basic demarcations of goodwill, then all this stuff is going to be basically an intellectual contest, right? To see whose religion is more profound, and we're really not in that business. So I mean, on the moral point, I think if the world is to have any hope of a future of peace and coexistence, as the professor has rightly pointed out, people of all backgrounds and contexts really need to sit down and talk good-naturedly to each other. It's really that simple. How we go about it in terms of execution and deployment is a different matter. The Pearl Institute is one of these many organs, I dare say not enough, but certainly one of the many that are facilitating the chances for these opportunities. I mean, I think it will be especially helpful for two radically different religions like Islam and Buddhism to come together in a multi-pronged manner to see what spiritual affinities we share, not just moral affinities. I actually think most people know we do share plenty of moral affinities. So whatever our differences, surely Buddhists and Muslims share the wish to be happy, to build caring communities and societies, to challenge greed and materialism, and to practice their faith and live their lives in peace. So I'm going to take a different approach in my brief talk. Professor Yusuf has really summarized much of his passions and life's work in this PowerPoint. I'm addressing mainly the issues in his chapter. Well, not all of them. can't address all of them. But so please go to the Pearl Institute website and download this chapter. It's just available for anyone to read. So there are two rubrics I'd like to discuss in Dr. Yusuf's chapter, which I identify as being fairly important to Buddhist-Islamic dialogue. These are, number one, an appreciation of history, and number two, theological creativity. That's going to get some hackles, but hear me out. So first of all, I think we all need to have a greater knowledge and appreciation of the importance of history. History as in, we talked about a little bit about history, but history is not just about saying, oh, this happened, and then this happened, and then, you know, this king did that, and then the prophet did that, or something like that. You know, the stories and lessons we tell each other shape our opinions. They shape the way we see ourselves, and they shape the way our communities and societies see themselves. If the narratives we tell are rich, nuanced, and sophisticated, the way we deal with other people will be rich, nuanced, and sophisticated. If our narratives are simplistic, boorish, and prejudiced, we will behave in exactly that way toward others. So if you want proof of this, simply pick up any Western newspaper reporting on acts of terrorism or Muslim people residing in the West. Stereotypes and tropes are formed when history is done in a lazy and sloppy way. If Muslims and Buddhists are to understand each other better, we need to do our best to leave behind our stereotypes, and the way to do that is to study history more thoroughly, more critically. Yeah. And I mean, this is the ideal. How you implement it is pretty difficult. You know, that means reforming education. That means transforming the way history is taught in our syllabus in all sorts of different schools, from primary all the way to university. But anyway, that's the ideal that I'm proposing. So one stereotype that Professor Yusuf talked about was the idea that Muslims are responsible for the extinction of Buddhism in India. That's one practical example from the Buddhist side that I think we need to stop repeating, because it's a harmful. From the Buddhist side, I'm saying that this is a harmful trope that gives Muslims a burden that they should not be saddled with, because yes, it's true that maybe there were invaders acting under the banner of Islam. That's a common historical problem. But you know, aside from the fact that many scholars are challenging the assumption that Buddhism went extinct at all, so actually now there's a new school of people that are saying, well, Buddhism actually never really disappeared. It just went intellectually bankrupt. But it wasn't the Muslims who made Buddhism intellectually bankrupt. That's what I'm challenging Buddhists with. Buddhism was really weakened from a myriad of different reasons. This included, economic displacement of Buddhism's North Indian patrons by sea traders in South Asia and Arabia and Africa. The dominance of Hindu, specifically Shaiva. Everyone heard of Shaivism? It's the cult of Shiva, the god of creation and destruction. Just as this is a peripheral concern, but Shaivism towards the 6th and 7th centuries came to dominate much of Indian religious discourse, and economic and political power shifted towards the kings and Brahmins who championed Shaivism. This put Buddhism in a fatal quandary, And from Dharmakirti onwards, some of you might have heard of a philosopher called Dharmakirti. I actually blame Dharmakirti for the extinction of Buddhism in India, because everyone loves Dharmakirti. He's a Buddhist logician. He lived in the 7th century or something like that. But actually, he was responsible for adapting Buddhist discourse to Hindu discourse. So he adopted the language of Tantra. Tantric Buddhism is a reflection of the Tantric Shaivism of the age. And so effectively, Buddhism conceded a great deal of ideological ground to Shaivite Hinduism. So actually, it is tempting for many, even some Buddhists, to create an external enemy that's out there to get us. And these big bad Muslims came and, ransacked all our temples, ransacked all our super monasteries like Nalanda, and burnt down all our villages. Yeah, but those can be rebuilt quite easily. Actually, that's one thing that everyone forgets. What's much harder to get back is ideological concession. That's one thing that we never got back in India, and that's why. So this is, in my opinion, this is good history. And when it's much harder to be angry at someone when you do good history, and that's something that everyone could learn. I mean, not just Buddhists, but also Muslims, Christians, all sorts of things, all sorts of people. And alluding to contemporary problems, Muslim communities across the world are particularly sensitive to how easy it is for a small minority to hijack Islamic discourse and theology, to let scared and misled demagogues to create a monster out of an entire religious tradition. In reality, the history of Buddhist and Islamic relations is complex and multifaceted. There is no single so-called narrative that can do justice to the breadth of experience shared by Muslims and Buddhists through the age of the Silk Road and the age of commerce. So once we have a deeper understanding of each other's past, I think we can understand each other more deeply in the present. So on to the next rubric, which is so-called theological creativity. It's not as bad as it sounds. So I think we must celebrate our doctrinal differences while seeking to use language that can bridge those differences. So we must accept each other's differences lest we become our own colonizers. I don't want to colonize my Muslim brother with the language of sameness. You're really just the same as me. Your opinion, your tradition doesn't really matter, because in the end it's just the same as mine. So we all lose in that context. But having said that, we do want to try to find some kind of language that can bridge the differences that do exist. So that's a very difficult task. It's what you would call interreligious theology, or what you would call comparative theology. So this comparative theology is not about making things up or changing the Buddhist or Islamic teachings to suit our agenda. Indeed, theology understands truth as already having been revealed at some point or encountered in some point in history, and must be interpreted in a relevant way for the exegete's contemporary society. So the truth is already out there. Our job is to interpret it, so we're not making stuff up. That's the position that we're trying to take. So I'd like to use the Second Vatican Council, which happened in 1962 to 65, if I remember correctly, as an example. In its interfaith document, Nostra Aetate, the Catholic Church essentially revised its question about other religions from are they saved, so are non-Catholics even saved according to our faith, to how are they saved? It's quite a small shift in wording, but the implications are enormous. So the question forces us to consider not whether people are saved according to our faith tradition, but they are already presumed to be a part of our plan, or to be a part of our worldview. But How? That's the question. The presupposition changes quite dramatically. It forces us to consider the possibilities for interfaith dialogue in a reciprocal manner, such as the prophetic dimensions of the Buddha and Muhammad, which Professor Yusuf addresses in his paper. And in this respect, he talks about the Buddha and Muhammad as in two ways. First, both as founders of religion, of a religion, and both as exemplary models. One of Buddha as Bodhisattva, and Muhammad as Al-Ihsan Al-Kamil, is that the right way? Yeah. So, really interesting questions. I recommend you check them out. Aside from reframing soteriological questions, we can also cautiously, with some caution, see what concepts between Islam and Buddhism overlap. I completely agree with Professor Yusuf's idea, and I quote from his paper, Islamic-Buddhist dialogue need not stumble in any final way over fundamental differences in theistic perspective, particularly if the broader and more flexible concept of ultimate reality, interpreted as personal or non-personal, is used. As he wrote, using the concept of God as a principle of axiological value rather than strictly in the category of a created divinity could help allow a discourse between concepts of Tawheed or transcendence and the eternal Dharma. So when relating to Buddhism, Islam, like Christianity, should try to go beyond the parameters of classical theology, and there are plenty of Christian theologians who are doing this as well. And while Buddhism really needs to entertain whether certain visions of Islam might well be visions of Arabian Samadhi, and I use that just figuratively. It could be Indonesian Samadhi or whatnot, or Pakistani Samadhi, I don't know. But it really needs to entertain whether there are certain components of Islam that could well be equated with experiences of enlightened vision. So ultimately, the idea of taking paradigms drawn from religious phenomena as the basis of dialogue doesn't only seem ripe with potential, but it also seems to stay safe, to be relatively faithful to their original sources without running the risk of distorting doctrines. In other words, we don't jump straight into the doctrine debate itself. We take paradigms drawn from what Buddhists and Muslims are already experiencing. So let me conclude with some thoughts on Dr. Yusuf's section on contemporary issues and themes of dialogue. So we are facing unprecedented complexity in many different parts of the world, especially in the Buddhist and Muslim world. So, as you alluded, the relationship between Buddhists and Muslims in Bangladesh is not the same to the problems experienced between Muslims and Buddhists in Thailand, and certainly not the same problem experiences by those Buddhists and Muslims in Xinjiang or anywhere else in China. Even the Sufi-influenced Sunni Islam of Turkey is quite different in many respects to the Islam of the Arabian Peninsula, or as far as I can tell, as an outsider. And I believe this is quite a particularly poignant point for our friends at Pearl Institute, because Turkey is perhaps the most exciting experiment of whether a community that blends traditional Islam and secular principles can succeed. And so there's a lot at stake here in terms of the stories that we can tell and in terms of the narratives that we can shape. If we get it right, coexistence can be quite a profound and transformative thing for possibly billions of people around the world. So as I said in my first rubric, treating people and communities on a case-by-case basis, I think is quite important, so that we avoid stereotypes and so that we can engage in cultural sensitivity. Our sense of this kind of historical sensitivity should also extend to the present and the future, which I alluded to earlier. And only then will people have the confidence and goodwill to discuss the difficult subject of the second rubric, which is theological creativity. So the two go hand in hand together. You know, you can't proclaim to be very creative in terms of interfaith theology or comparative theology, while at the same time sort of, you know, using rather broad strokes on people's histories, because history is a sensitive thing. It matters. You know, people's pasts matter, and a community's past is everything. You know, erase historical records. What does that do? That's the ultimate way to destroy a community, you know, or people. You don't need to kill everyone. You just need to destroy their history. Anyway, so once you've got the history, then people have the goodwill and the confidence to say, okay, you're taking me seriously. Let's sit down and talk. And then you can be more adventurous. Then you can talk about, oh, you know, what concepts can we sort of interpret in a new light, you know, in the face of globalization or in the face of, you know, cross-cultural contact. What needs to be, what presuppositions should be adjusted, right? What do we feel safe about, you know, talking to each other, you know, because belief is an intimate thing. And it's quite a personal matter, and so when Muslims and Buddhists welcome each other into their sort of sensitive spaces, then there needs to be a reciprocal attitude of care and hospitality, both in terms of history and in terms of theological creativity. So only then can we discover the riches that we have in store for each other. Thanks very much.